Hello, everyone. How's it going? This is immigration attorney Moumita. I'm coming to you live to talk about immigration and to see the questions that you may have on your mind. For those of you who are watching me for the very first time, thank you. And for those of you who have been following me, I thank you also for watching and talking about everything that is important to you on your mind. The question that I have for you today is, if you are waiting, if you have been inside the United States, waiting for your waiver to get approved, waiting for your appointment at the consulate back home so you can go back and go get your visa, but you are now separated from your spouse, should you still leave the country to go to your consular interview and risk getting denied? What are your options if you and your spouse have been separated and you already started the process, but now you have gotten your notification that the consulate is ready to give you your interview? Well, I'm going to talk about this. And before I go any further, hello to everyone who's watching. My name is Moumita Rahman. I am an immigration attorney, and I live and work in New York City, where I work with clients all over the US. So no matter where you live, definitely feel free to give us a call, especially if you are in this situation right now. So let's get right into it. Many of you may have come into the US illegally and you have gone to other lawyers and you started a process for something called the I-601 waiver perdón process. And this is a very long process. The whole case will take you probably years until you can get an appointment at the consulate back home. And for those of you who, especially who are going to the consulate in Ciudad Juarez, you may be waiting many years for your appointment. So what happens if you have become separated from your spouse, but then you find out that you've gotten your interview and not only are you separated from your spouse, but your spouse does not want to help you get your green card? What are your options? Well, if you have been going through situations in your marriage where your spouse has definitely held your immigration status over your head, constantly telling you that they're going to cancel your case, that you need their help to go forward, maybe they make you feel like you owe them a lot, or that you are trying to do everything you can to keep your spouse happy, to keep them from losing their temper, to keep them from getting angry, then you may have a situation where you may not even need to leave the United States to go for your interview. And even if you have already gotten the appointment at the consulate, you may be eligible to start a process inside the United States where you can self-petition for your own green card without having to leave the United States and without having to worry about your spouse. And yes, you may be able to do this even if you are separated from your spouse. Ladies and gentlemen, even if you have gotten divorced from your U.S. citizen spouse, you may still be eligible to self-petition for a green card as long as your divorce did not happen more than 2 years ago. This is a wonderful option, especially because we all know how difficult relationships are, and we all know how difficult marriages are. But when you are undocumented and you throw into the mix the additional pressures and strain of having to wait for your papers to get fixed and then having to constantly rely on your spouse, and things may not always go so well. Like, let's say, for example, there are some people who, you live in situations where spouses, can be telling you what to do, how to do it. They get upset with you or irritated over everything. They take things out on you. And when they're especially mad, they may be always talking about the fact that you are using them for their papers, or you only deserve X, Y, and Z help because you're undocumented. So these are the situations that I want you to keep in mind, that even if you have already started the consular process, and even if you have gotten your appointment to go to the consulate for your interview, you may be eligible to do a process here instead, especially if you're already separated, even if you're divorced, as long as the divorce was not more than 2 years ago, okay? So definitely give us a call. I would be happy to take a look at your case. I would be so happy to give you back some hope and some relief to know that you may still have an option to move forward, even though you're no longer with your husband or with your wife, okay? All right, everyone. So make sure you go ahead and drop me your questions, drop me your comments. Let me know what state you're in. Let me know what country you're from. I would love to know. And I'm going to go ahead and start answering as many questions as I can in the time that I have today. And for those of you who need my help, give us a call at 212-248-7907. This is my direct office line, my direct office number. To make an appointment with me, you have to call this number or send us a message on Instagram. Send us a message on Instagram, all right? Okay. Deep Batar is in California. If my husband has cheated, left the home, doing drugs, I'm getting therapy, what are my options? from Ereo Campo. Ereo Campo, if your husband has cheated on you, you are the immigrant, your husband has cheated on you, they've left you at home, they've abandoned you, they're doing drugs, they're getting in trouble, they're costing you peace and money as well. And the worst part is if somebody has a substance abuse problem, if your spouse, if your U.S. citizen or green card holding spouse does drugs, drinks heavily, leaves the home for days. Sometimes they don't even come home at night. When they come home or when they're getting drunk or doing drugs at home, they take it out on you and you become afraid of what they're going to do. You become afraid of how they're going to react. You may have a situation on your hands where you are being subject to extreme cruelty, and that means that we can apply for a green card for you, as well as a work permit, as well as a travel document in most situations, and help you get your green card here without having to leave the US. And the best part about it is that you don't need to wait around for your husband to give you the documents, to consent, to go to that lawyer's appointment with you. How many of you have been in that situation where you get together the money to start your green card process, to go talk to a lawyer, and then all of a sudden your spouse starts complaining about what they need to do, about how they don't have the documents, how they don't have an ID, and now is not a good time to apply, right? Don't let that control your destiny. Don't let that control your destiny and prevent you from legalizing your status, because when somebody does that, I can almost guarantee that there's more things happening that you may not be wanting to think about right now, but more things may be happening behind closed doors that are causing you an additional amount of pain and suffering and aggravation, okay? That's why I do want you to give us a call. Give us a call because I really, really, really appreciate the chance to work on these cases so that I can help people out of these situations and allow them to know that it doesn't all have to be hopeless, okay? Why are I-751 interviews taking so long from Lubana? Lubana, they've always taken a long time. They're taking a little bit longer now because interviews have been delayed because of COVID-19, and I-751 interviews are just not a priority for immigration because they're prioritizing citizenship interviews as well as interviews for persons who have never gotten their green card in the first place. So these people are the ones who are going to end up getting the interview first. If you're waiting for your I-751 interview, you're still going to get it, but it's just going to take a little bit longer, which is why the government gives you a 2-year extension on your card, so you shouldn't have to worry. And even if your extension letter expires when you have the I-751 pending, your status is still considered to be valid, and you can actually make an appointment with InfoPass to get a stamp in your passport, okay? I applied for my U visa in December 2016. Can you tell me when I'll get the U visa? From Sukhdeep. Sukhdeep, I cannot tell you. These applications are taking between 5 to 10 years. Let's see. What's a call-in letter from I Want to Sleep 39? I Want to Sleep 39, a call-in letter is just another way for saying interview appointment. But what happens when you get the call-in letter from USCIS is the fact that the actual field office for immigration will send you this appointment letter rather than the appointment letter being generated by a service center or somewhere else. So it looks a little bit different, but literally it's just an appointment letter. That's all that it is. And Gerald, hi, nice to see you. I applied for I-485. How many months do I have to wait for EAD card? All right, so Ashwani, if you have applied for a marriage-based green card and you have applied for your work permit, work permits for this sort of category are taking an average of 10 to 12 months. Yes, some of you may even end up getting your interview before you actually get your work permit, which is happening to some of my clients as well. What is the chance if you are entry without inspection and then you marry a U.S. citizen in a good standing marriage from yes play? So if you're married to a citizen, it does not matter how long you have been married to the citizen, how long you have been good, how clean your record is. One of the main things that the government is looking at is to see your manner of entry into the United States. So they look to see if you have a legal entry into the United States with, you've presented your passport and a visa, or you have had the opportunity to do so and customs doesn't really ask for it, right? That's called a waive-in entry. Or did you actually try to evade immigration laws by walking and crossing through a border, right? They look to see if you have a legal entry with inspection or your entry was without inspection. And even if you are married to a citizen, you cannot really adjust your status inside the United States if you don't have an entry with inspection, unless you are filing for VAWA, which is for persons who are married to U.S. citizens, where the U.S. citizen spouse has caused the client to suffer through things such as what we call extreme cruelty or physical battery. To break it down for you, what extreme cruelty is basically it's a series of actions that may not appear violent, but they have the effect of controlling or manipulating the immigrant spouse. And physical battery is basically physical violence, right? Basically the textbook version of domestic violence. However, what I will tell you from my years of experience is that domestic abuse is actually not that textbook, and it can exist in so many different formats. And I would say, one of the best ways to identify it for yourself is if you find yourself acting in ways out of fear or out of a choice to not upset things with your spouse, then that may be an indication that you are going through a situation where your spouse uses certain things to maybe intentionally or unintentionally keep you underneath their control and have you behaving in a way that they like. If you're going through these things, then we may be able to help you file for VAWA, and this would allow you to apply for a green card inside the United States, if you qualify for it, of course, regardless of your entry, whether it's with inspection or it's done illegally, okay? So that's really what it would depend on. Stephanie, thank you for sharing my video. Can I live in the US while applying for a green card from Jasmine Orantes? Jasmine, it depends on the category of green card that you apply for. For example, like what I just mentioned, if your spouse is filing for you and they're a US citizen, or you are filing for a self-petition underneath VAWA where your spouse is either a US citizen or a green card holder, then you can stay into the US. However, if your spouse is a permanent resident and you're doing a joint application, you have to be in status and with a valid visa entry for us to proceed in your case. Otherwise, you can wait it out at home or do a waiver, okay? At Aerocampo, give us a call, 212-248-7907, okay? All right, guys, give me just one sec. I'm just scrolling through a bunch of questions right now. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I love getting questions, and I'll do my best to answer all of them. I give my fingerprints for citizenship. It's still in process. It's outside the processing time from CC Love. CC Love, you can make, if you know that your case is outside the normal processing time because you've looked it up on USCIS, you can call customer service and make a service request. My parents are over 79. Can I apply for citizenship? They are green card holders since 2000. I'm from Sunny B. Sunny B, if anyone has a green card for 22 years and they haven't yet applied for citizenship, what are you waiting for? It's time to apply. But definitely everyone's case is different, and we need to look at the reasons why somebody may not have applied and whether they're eligible to do so now. How can I check if I have any police report? How can I check from Rosie Bon? Rosie Bon, anyone who knows that they have had any sort of encounter with police. Criminal records and immigration are a pair. If you've ever had any encounter with law enforcement, you must have your records to show to immigration what was the final outcome of that case. And the best way to get your records is, number one, you can do an FBI fingerprint-based search to see like what the whole national database says, but that may not always give you everything. So number two, what I would recommend is that if you know what state you had an encounter or an arrest or a conviction in, try to look to see if there are any statewide searches that can be done, either based upon your name or based upon your fingerprint, okay? And the next step is to just contact the police departments and the courts directly if you know exactly where you had a conviction. But you need to have original dispositions and certificates to show what finally happened, okay? For parole in place, how old does my daughter have to be to apply? From Ana Villegas. Ana, I think it's probably 18, but for parole in place, it could be any child who's in the military or any spouse who's in the military to do that for you. But you need to have, you need to have an actual petitioner as well. And the petitioner needs to be 21 years old. for the most part, if it's a child who's petitioning for you. Can someone with a U visa obtain residency via marriage? From Jay Benitez. Jay Benitez, yes. If you are married to a citizen or to a green card holder, you have a U visa, you should be able to proceed with filing for your residency. But it's going to depend on a few different things, including your manner of entry and what other inadmissibilities you may have. And inadmissibility is just a fancy immigration term for a roadblock to green card status. Think of it that way. An inadmissibility is like a roadblock, and you have to basically go ahead and ask for a waiver sometimes if you are inadmissible. Okay. My husband has DACA. Does he have to go back to Mexico for the interview? From V. Velasquez. V. Velasquez. If your spouse has DACA, if you yourself have DACA and you're married to a U.S. citizen, I would say the best thing for you is to try to get advance parole. Because if you have been told that you need to go back to your country for an interview, that means that you likely do not have an entry with inspection, which means that you basically don't have a legal entry. And advance parole is going to help you get a stamp in your passport so that you can use that in the future for a green card process into the United States. Now, if you have a legal entry, then you don't need to leave the United States and you can just file for adjustment of status, okay? But if you have DACA and you can give any sort of valid, good faith reason for traveling outside the US, I recommend that you submit that application now. They are taking some time to process. So it'll probably take about a year at this point. I believe that's how long they're taking, but go ahead and do it. You have nothing to lose and you have a lot to gain by doing it. Of course, if it doesn't get approved, you'll lose the fees that you pay for it, but sometimes that's worth it for this benefit that it can give you of being able to adjust your status inside the United States without having to leave. Now, what happens if you have DACA, you're married to a citizen, and things are not always so good for you in your marriage? If you feel like, even though you have DACA, your spouse constantly is letting you know that you're not really their equal, you're not the same, you're still, undocumented, and there's other things that happen that you feel ashamed to talk about, definitely give us a call, 212-248-7907, because we may be able to help you get and apply for your green card inside the United States. You definitely would not need to leave for this. And you don't also need to get your spouse involved, okay? I will assess your eligibility to see if you qualify for a VAWA self-petition, all right? Can a DACA recipient get a real ID in California? From Marielas. Marielas, and everyone, by the way, the Real ID Act is going to finally go into effect, I believe, beginning this March. You need to have a Real ID Act compliant ID to travel domestically. If you don't have it, then you can't travel domestically. You'll put yourself in danger probably. And you have to check with the rules in your state about what sort of identification you can give to get your Real ID. And Marielas, I believe that if you have DACA, then you should probably qualify for a Real ID, but you have to check the rules. I'm not keeping up to date on it right now. I'll try to do a video on it later. All right. Can I apply for my 32-year-old brother? From El Yusuf, and anyone who wants to apply. If you want to apply for your sibling, is it possible? Well, yes, of course. You can always apply for your sibling, but will they qualify is a different story. Now, sibling petitions normally take between 10 to 15 years, sometimes more, especially if you're from Mexico or China. It's going to take like almost 20 years if your sibling applies for you. And if your sibling is inside the United States and you're trying to apply for them, it's probably not going to work because they're going to need a waiver and they can't be inside the United States without status, basically. But if they're outside the US, then we can do something called consular processing for them, okay? Is getting a green card difficult if you married while on a tourist visa? Getting a green card is if you get married while you're on a tourist visa, that generally does not make it automatically more difficult. But we have to look at what is called the totality of circumstances. Overall, how does it look? Did you just come into the US on your tourist visa on February 1st and get married on February 2nd? That's going to raise a lot of eyebrows. But if you've been here for a while, and just really depends on the relationship. It really depends on each individual case. So I would not say that getting married while on a tourist visa generally makes it more difficult to get a green card, because I've had dozens of clients get their green card, because, and they may have gotten married while here on a tourist visa. But every case has to be properly prepared, and it needs individual attention. So definitely give us a call, 212-248-7907. I do so many green card applications, complicated cases where you want to make sure that you have a good attorney on your side to look over everything, to prepare you properly for the difficult questions at your interview. What are some of the difficult questions, and what are some of the difficult scenarios that I consider to be things that people need to prepare for a green card interview? Here are some of the top scenarios that I think immigration officers look out for and will start to question you more heavily on when you are doing a joint marriage green card application. Number one, if you and your spouse don't live together, that's going to raise some eyebrows, and you better be prepared to explain why. Number two, if you and your spouse have a really, really big age difference, and we're talking like 10, 15, 20 years, sometimes more, that is also going to raise the eyebrows of immigration, and they are more likely to question you a little bit more heavily on your case. Another one is if you and your spouse come from very different backgrounds and very different cultures, that's going to raise some eyebrows too. And another one that can frequently raise the suspicions of immigration is if you as the US citizen don't work or have very, very little income compared to your foreign spouse, then that can also raise the suspicions of immigration, because they may be more inclined to view that as a sign of fraud. Look, all of these things may be signs of fraud to immigration, but it does not mean that your case is necessarily going to get denied. You have to be prepared. You have to be able to show everything, and you have to be able to testify credibly to show that your marriage is real. Of course, if your marriage is not real, please don't engage in fraudulent fake marriages and don't submit applications. Please don't come to me, because I will not help anyone who does not have a real marriage. I must be satisfied that my client's married for the right reasons, and then I'll be able to proceed. I have a large reputation and the stakes of so many clients to defend and protect, so I will never risk it for a fake marriage, okay? All right. Elizabeth is saying, you're the best. I just got my approval letter. Everyone who's on this live, she's a great attorney. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. Hearts and hugs to you. All right. All right. I'm waiting for my green card interview. My case is in Kansas City. It's already been 12 months. When can I go from Sing? Make sure you check the processing time, all right? Thank you for all the follows. Mohit is saying, I have an appointment with me on April 5th. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm looking forward to talking to you, Mohit. How can we make the I-601 waiver go faster from Jake Gutierrez? Jake, anyone who has any sort of immigration application pending, if you have any sort of emergency that requires the expedite of that application, you have nothing to lose by submitting it to immigration. But please, you have to make sure that there is some sort of emergency, either a medical situation or some other emergency situation or some other urgent humanitarian reason why you need to expedite your case. And if you are going to request that USCIS expedite your application, you need to give them proof. And anytime we do expedites, we always provide affidavits, any sort of documentary proof to show all these things. We treat it almost like its own little mini case when we do an expedite. So you can always do that, but it will depend on each individual case. With approved SIJ status and pending I-360, can I terminate my asylum for Bangladesh, Bapi Amir? If you have approved SIJ status and a pending I-360, I would probably wait until your priority date is current, and so that you can file your I-485. And I would then probably, even now you can reach out to the DHS ICE attorneys to see if they would agree to a request for prosecutorial discretion to terminate your case in court. And then at that time, you can basically cancel or withdraw your asylum application. But I wouldn't do that until your I-485 is actually current. And I actually wouldn't do that until you get approved, okay? Is it possible to continue living in the United States with a visa and being required for my mother's citizen? from Klaus. Klaus, your mother will probably, if you're an adult, especially if you're married or if you're an adult above 21 and you have a U.S. citizen mother or father who wants a petition for you, I'm afraid to say it's going to be very difficult, because if you become out of status while you are here waiting for that visa to become current, you're going to need a waiver, and you're also going to need to leave the United States to get your visa processed for the permanent residency. And applications for green cards for adult children of U.S. citizens can also take like 15 years. Pardon me. All right, guys. Mika Zen is asking, have you ever gotten a rejected VAWA case? Mika Zen, very difficult question that I'm going to answer very honestly live here. I have had one case rejected this entire time. So what I say right now is not a guarantee of future cases being approved. But this one case had issues because the shared residency was not provable. Other than that, I have been lucky enough, thanks be to God, to have everything approved. And the reason that I attribute to this is I put myself in the shoes of the client. I put myself in the shoes of the client, and I feel their pain. I feel their pain. I believe my clients, and I see that they are suffering. If you are suffering and you are going through anxiety and depression, first of all, when a person suffers psychological harm during the course of a marriage, and psychological harm can be manifested in many different ways, including lack of ability to sleep, depression, anxiety, night sweats, lots of things, nightmares, PTSD. This is considered violence. The law itself says that psychological harm considers violence. It is considered to be violence itself. That is very, very powerful. And most attorneys try to hold VAWA cases to an extremely high level, and thus they end up scaring away people or telling or making people feel as though the pain that they have gone through is not valid for whatever reason, or that they need to do so much more to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And the thing about VAWA applications, self-petitions, is that the standard of evidence is any credible evidence, any credible evidence. So yes, you do have to be careful to make sure that there's no discrepancies in your case. And you have to make sure that you have whatever you can provide, okay? So I am happy to report that I have a very good success rate on my cases. Of course, it's not a guarantee of an approval on anyone's case, because every case is individual and different. However, we work so hard in all of our cases, and we care so deeply about our clients that we do whatever we can to make sure that it's a solid, airtight case, and that it's going to be received well by immigration. The processing time for an N-400 until an oath ceremony. So once you have your interview for the citizenship, how long will it take until you get your oath ceremony? Well, usually it will depend on how long does it take for them to approve your case. Sometimes officers need to do additional investigation and research into any issues on your citizenship case that may come out during the interview especially. But if they're ready to issue the decision right away, then normally it'll take about a month, maybe less, maybe a couple of months at most, to get your appointment for the oath ceremony. Now, if you're lucky enough to live in certain places where they do the ceremonies right at the office, you're really lucky, because as long as you pass your interview on that day, you'll be able most likely to have your swearing in and walk out of immigration as a citizen. My wife is 10 years older and I'm Latino. I've been out of status for a while. The interview I had this past Monday was so smooth. The officer was really cool to us. Felipe, congratulations. I hope you get your approval really, really soon, my friend. My husband came as a student, then he stayed illegal to obtain citizenship. He married a Caribbean girl, even though he was legally married in the US. He married me in India as well. Well, that would probably be considered a bigamous marriage. So anytime somebody marries somebody else while they are already legally married to somebody else, that's really not right. And but if you're in a situation where you get married to somebody in good faith, and later you find out that your spouse is already legally married to somebody else, do you have any options? Well, I would say yes, you probably have an option to file a VAWA self-petition, because to me, if your spouse is lying to you about their marital status and they induce you to get married, and now you're married to somebody who's a citizen who's still legally married to somebody else, well, then you probably have grounds for a lot of manipulation, a lot of deception, and a lot of hurt, of course. So I would be happy to look at your case to see if you qualify for VAWA. Do you have to be married to do VAWA? From Dion. Dion, yes, absolutely. One of the most critical requirements for VAWA applications, if you're doing it as a spouse, is that you have to be legally married to your spouse. But you can also do VAWA if you're the parent of an adult U.S. citizen child who has been causing you lots of the same thing, right? So if you have a U.S. citizen child who has been deceiving you, manipulating you, guilting you, threatening you, causing you to support them for everything, even though they can go do work, disrespecting you, leaving whenever they want, all these things, and you are just feeling like you're left holding the bag. You're just left holding the bag when it comes to your adult child, and you just have to keep, you don't want to enrage them. You don't want them to get angry, because when they get angry, they are screaming at you, yelling at you. Maybe they humiliate you in public. Well, then your adult, through that, you may also qualify to file for a self-petition for VAWA. It would not cause any trouble to your child, but it would be a pathway for you to get your green card and get your work permit and your travel documents for all these things that you have gone through. Okay. Let's see. I moved with my husband to the U.S. because I got pregnant and I had my baby in the U.S. Will I have trouble crossing? So I'm not too sure about that, Jasmine. So definitely it all depends, right? Yeah, I would say if you're crossing with a young child, that could possibly be the grounds for smuggling in the future. But definitely give us a call and we'll take a look at your case, okay? Can you help with the K-1 visa from Jafar Ashun? Jafar, I'm not doing K-1 visas at this time. What should I do if my asylum case is pending for more than 6 years? From Bruce TV. Bruce TV, that's a very long time. There's really not much you can do. But if you have an emergency or a reason that you need your asylum interview expedited right now, you can write to the asylum office and ask them to advance your interview. An I-130 petition for a wife. I'm a citizen. How to make my case with USCIS to accelerate, from DJ Trachko. DJ Trachko, again, if you want to accelerate your case, you have to show a valid emergency reason. How long can an appeal take? An appeal can take a very, very long time. If you are trying to appeal something with immigration because they denied your case or they wrongly decided your case, appeals can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to be decided. If you are divorced, can you do VAWA? From Adil Martinez event. Adil, if you are divorced, you may still be eligible to do VAWA as long as your divorce is not more than 2 years old. If you have gone through the things that are required for us to show a solid VAWA case, we can still file your VAWA as long as your divorce is not more than 2 years old. And this is very powerful because if you've gotten divorced and you've been going, you have basically lost all sorts of hope about what is possible for you and what is not. And you just felt like because you've already ended that marriage legally, you have nothing else that you can do. It simply may not be the truth. Now, if your divorce happened 5 years, more than 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, then yes, it may be too late. But one thing that I would urge you to do is look to see, did you know that you were getting your divorce? Because some people may end up divorcing you without ever letting you know, without ever serving you properly with the papers. And divorce inside this country is a legal proceeding. It's basically a lawsuit that somebody has to start against somebody else in order to terminate the marriage. And by doing this, you have to serve the papers. And what happens in many cases is that your spouse may be acting in bad faith and may never have served you, and they may never have filed things properly. That happens to you. If you're all of a sudden surprised to find out that you're divorced, and that happened many years ago, more than 2 years ago, then you may have the option, you may be able to try to get your case reopened so that would restore you to the married state, okay? And then we can file for VAWA. Okay. My husband has DACA. Does he have to go back to Mexico for the interview? Eve, I think I've already answered that. I have 2 entries. Can I still file for VAWA? From Destiny. Destiny, yes, you can still file for VAWA, and we may even be able to get your residency even if you have 2 entries, as long as we're able to show a connection between one of the exits or entries with what you have gone through in your marriage, okay? So in many cases, we may, even if you have the permanent bar, we may still be able to get you approved, not just for VAWA, but also for residency and the green card, okay? But every case is different and it really depends. Mike Stewart is saying, Moumita, if my ex-wife is still married to her first husband, I just found out, and we're not living together for a year, I filed for divorce. Should I get my divorce or should I file for annulment? From Mike Stewart. Well, Mike Stewart, if you're looking to file for VAWA, I would probably not do annulment, okay? Iceland is saying, hi, Moumita, I'm gay. I want to marry a guy in USA. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm illegal. Is it still possible from Iceland? Iceland. So first of all, I'm glad you're here and you're able to express yourself openly. You can get married to whoever you want inside the US, whether you have status or not. And I applaud you for doing that. And if you are afraid to go back to Bangladesh or if you're afraid to go back to your home country because of your sexuality and you're afraid of what will happen to you because maybe you come from a conservative country or a Muslim country or something like that, then we may be also able to help you file for asylum, okay? Definitely give us a call, 212-248-7907. All right, everybody, my time is up. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. It's so good to see everybody. I'm sorry I could not answer everything, but I'll be back soon. Have a great night.